on. The crazy thing about this is that a month ago, I had Jeff Lonczak on the show, and right after the last time I had Jeff on the show a month ago, right after him was Dukes Knutson. On today's broadcast, Dukes Knutson is joining me for an all-new segment right after Jeff Lonczak. So it's funny how God works. Pretty awesome. Inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin'. We're going to start off this broadcast as we always do on Wednesdays with Dolphin Time. We'll be jumping into a Dolphin dive with Jeff Lonczak, the Moyne College Dolphins men's and women's tennis head coach. And a lot of stuff to talk about in our Road to D1 series. And then in hour number 2, we'll be joined by Dukes Knutson for what is going to be a bi-monthly segment every other Wednesday entitled Blessings and Baseball. And we'll tell you exactly what that means coming up in just a little bit. But right now, it's time to get into our continuation of our Road to D1 series. And here, picture in picture with me in this continuation of the Road to D1, as you just saw on the screen, his name there, Jeff Lonczak, with this Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis teams, our head coach and our D1 head coach as of July 1st. Mr. Lonczak, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Jeff, first and foremost, bring me into this, because you and I were discussing this, and well, here's the irony too. This is the craziness of the last time you were on the show. Good things happen when we cross paths, I feel. So the last time you were on, you and I were talking about potentially going D1, and while I was on the air with you, I was notified that Moyne was going D1. And so, like, it was, I think, no, I got called while I was on the air with you, and then after we got off the phone, I found that out. So I said, how crazy is this that I'm speaking with Jeff about it, and then I got the call that everything was going through and that I had to be prepared for it. So in real time of us talking about it the last time you were on the show, I found out that it was actually going to happen, which was pretty cool.
Amazing. Yeah, I was in Florida with the men, preparing for our for our NCAA Division II championship. So yeah, it was crazy for me too. Unbelievable.
For you, Jeff, you challenge your team, you put your team out there. We've talked about this before, the way that you schedule your non-conference. You do not shy away from playing Division I programs. So to you, of all coaches at Moyne, this might be the the change, I guess we would call it. I mean, you might be the most used to playing Division I opponents. So what are your thoughts on this, having already scheduled a bunch of Division I foes non-conference-wise for your men's and women's tennis teams, to now know that Moyne is going to be a Division I institution? How do you take it, being a coach that's already put yourself in the Division I world?
I mean, I'm so excited about it. I mean, I think it's just a huge opportunity for the college itself. Yeah, I mean, for our programs personally, having played a lot of Division I schools, it's a little different in terms of the gap. I think I mean, in different sports, I think that gap between Division I and Division II may be a little bit larger, but in tennis, it's not quite as big, and I'd like to think that our programs have proven it. I mean, the proximity of the other schools or Division I scheduling will become easier. I think it's great for everybody. We're really excited.
You said to me last time you were on the show that there's a school not too far away that can't really make an excuse now, potentially, in scheduling you if you were to go D1. Are we talking about Syracuse, and what are your thoughts?
No, to be honest with you, we weren't talking about Syracuse in that regard. The team that I was talking about scheduled us. So, I mean, that's great. Eunice is a friend of mine, the women's coach. So, I mean, I think that will happen eventually, and I think it's going to be predicated on my women's team continuing to get stronger.
And so, what can you tell us about the schedule? Who are you facing? What can you share with us this morning on Wake Up Call as far as what Lemoyne men's and women's tennis is going to look like as you head to D1 as of July 1st?
Right. So so I mean, it literally went from that day when I found out we were D1 to kind of having a schedule to not having a schedule in a short period of time. So yeah, I mean, I've been scrambling. We're trying to do so. The way it works with men's and women's tennis is that the fall season is kind of a series of invite tournaments, individual tournaments. So I got one of those for the men, still trying to get more for the women. On the men's and women's side, now the women's season becomes a spring sport, where it was a fall sport the previous 15 or so years. So it's good for the college in terms of budgeting. We'll be able to travel together in a lot of spaces. I was able to get a little bit over. I think I got 12 or 13 D1 opponents, 5 of which are in the conference. So we got Wagner, we got LIU Post, we got St. Francis, PA. I got Siena men and women, Niagara men and women. Morgan State's coming up to play us, which is exciting. Merrimack's coming up to play us. Stonehill is coming up to play us, so we can renew our rivalry there. And it's been cool. I think we'll still be able to add Buffalo here down the road. We definitely have Colgate as always. So I mean, it's great. Because it was last minute, there was a few schools that were full and weren't able to play us. But one of the things that I'm trying to implement with scheduling is trying to kind of like piggyback off what Colgate does, because they play at Drumlin's, which is in Syracuse. So basically, the teams that travel to them in the Patriot League, a la Bucknell, Lehigh, Holy Cross, and those guys, I try to get them over to play us too in that same weekend, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. Obviously, a great idea to say, hey, while you're in town, might as well get a double matchup here. If you're going to go and play Colgate, then go ahead and play us as well. So I think that's awesome. You mentioned that you have Niagara men and women and Siena men and women. Now, those two schools are in the state of New York, but outside of the NEC. What's your excitement about getting these Division I New York opponents here to have Niagara and Siena?
Yeah, it's really exciting. Siena has completely revitalized their program. They made the NCAA tournament on the men's side for the first time in their history this past year. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge. I've always wanted to play them because we always kind of go east on 90 in the NE10.
Yeah,
I always try to pick them up, and it just didn't seem to work out. Niagara, we've played here and there over the years. We've beat them on the men's side. Been close on the women's. So yeah, it's just great to have a 2.5 hour, 3 hour, 2 hour type match where we can drive there, play, and come back.
Is there anyone in New York State that, I know you said scheduling wise you had a schedule and then all of a sudden you didn't. So is there anybody New York wise that you would like to create a rivalry with in the not too distant future?
Well, I mean, rivalry is a tough word. I mean,
I guess I can say, is there somebody that you would like to, if you like to face?
Yeah. No, that's yeah. I mean, I'm trying. I think I might be able to get Cornell on the men's side. That would be exciting. I mean, I want the Johnnies, to be honest. I mean, if that's a possibility, and I think it will be. I mean, otherwise in New York State, I mean, probably the best team in our state, the best team in the Northeast is Columbia. So I mean, that would be maybe a few years down the road. We'd like to get those guys. Yeah, but we're keep looking for opportunities to challenge ourselves.
Yeah, and you said you want St. John's. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, the Johnnies, absolutely.
So,
I'd love to get
St.
that down the Queens.
Yeah, bring me into why you want St. John's.
I mean, they're historically one of the best teams in the Northeast, for one. Obviously, they were a Big East team in tennis. I believe I believe they maybe they still are. I thought they moved conference and maybe they ended up coming back. But just being able to compete with a team like that would be really exciting. I'm pretty sure they play at the National Tennis Center, so that's a cool place to play as well.
Yeah, and speaking here with Jeff Lonczak, the head coach of the Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis teams here in this Road to D1 series on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, exclusively inside a Dolphin Dive. Jeff, one of the things you talk about, getting St. John's on and some of these, and obviously their connection to the Big East. What does this do for you, excitement-wise, as a coach, as a former player, as someone who still plays, when you know that you're now Division I and you have the St. Bonaventure, Syracuse, Niagara, Siena, Albany, Binghamton, and we'll talk about Binghamton in a second. But when you look across the state at all of these Division I institutions, just in New York, what does that do for Lemoyne, and what does it do for men's and women's tennis? And I know you said rivalry is a big word, but these rivalries could be very easy to create in the sense of now being D1, you're not going to travel that far to them. They're not going to travel that far to you. And there's so many that, either a throughway rivalry or an Interstate 81, it seems like we can sell a lot of these matches a lot easier.
No, yeah. And you just touched on something interesting. I mean, the I-90 and the 81 rivalries. Yeah. I mean, I feel like those will work themselves out and they'll be there. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's great. I think what it brings really for us, the school as a whole, is just a level of relevancy. D2, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Sometimes you feel a little bit like you're lost in the shuffle, because it's a lot different than D3, and it's not as different as D1, but it's like you kind of get lost. Now here at the D1 space, I think it's huge. And I ran into a friend of mine who was a starting point guard at Lemoyne for 4 years, when we were, way back when. But he, is a donor, is a very active member, and he's pumped up. He's pumped up for basketball. He's pumped up for everybody, and I think it just brings this level of relevancy to Lemoyne that maybe wasn't there in the past.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about it, that you were excited about the potential move. So what made you so excited? I mean, is it the relevancy? Is there something else to it? Like, why did you feel like going Division I was the right decision?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, to be honest with you, as an athlete, as a tennis player, like that was always it for me. That was my goal. I want to be a D1 tennis player. I want to be a D1 tennis player. So, now in that space, I think it's going to allow for more kids like myself to attend Lemoyne. It's gonna help recruiting. I mean, it's just so cool. I mean, it's too bad in some ways that a lot of people think that it's just D1 or nothing, and that's kind of where my headspace was as a kid. But yeah, I mean, it brings us to a whole nother level, and the opportunities there are vast.
How can these two teams, beyond scheduling, what other opportunities do you find in D1 that you think can help to build and continue to build the men's and women's tennis teams? What does D1 do for you immediately in your growth?
So from a recruiting standpoint, I think, as you can see, most of my teams are pretty much international across the board. What that D1 space does, it allows me to be perceived by the American kid who's 150 in the country, in a better light. So all of a sudden, these kids that have no idea who or what Lemoyne is, being D2 in the Northeast 10, now all of a sudden they're D1. Oh, okay. let me take I'm gonna major in business. I like this fact that we're a population of 2,500, that the education is amazing, and these guys play real good tennis. That's interesting. So now all of a sudden, that kind of world opens up for Lemoyne tennis.
Yeah, and like you said, recruiting wise, I mean, you've been able to pull recruits from all over the world, and you've gotten them to believe in your program. How did you do that when there is that, oh, I'd love to play D1? How did you sell Lemoyne when Lemoyne was Division II?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I sold it for the international kid, and I think I like to think that hopefully they appreciate my candor, because I'm honest pretty much about everything across the board, and the big thing is with me and the way I speak to recruits and the things that I'm looking for them is competitiveness. I mean, like myself, we need to be extremely competitive. And the way I sold, I didn't really sell the D2 versus D1 thing back then. I sold Lemoyne, and Lemoyne being this high level academic institution, the opportunity to play for me and be one of the best Northeast schools in all of Division II. That was kind of what I was preaching, and now being that we're D1, we're trying to get to be one of the top D1 schools in the Northeast.
Speaking here with Jeff Lonczak, the head coach of the Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis teams in this Road to D1 series for Lemoyne College, who will be a Division I institution as of July 1st, 2023. Now, we know that this is an interesting world of the NEC, because when you look at different things, now the NEC has their full-time members, their complete members, and then they have those associate members, right? The members that come in for certain sports and whatnot. So looking at that and knowing that, we now know that we're going to see Binghamton University become an associate member in men's golf and men's and women's tennis. What's your take on the fact that Binghamton University, yet another team in the state of New York, another Division I institution for men's and women's tennis, an hour away from Lemoyne, right down 81, is now going to be considered a conference game?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, Nick Zazula, the men's coach, and Libby McGovern, the women's coach, I know them pretty well. They just recently bought my friend's club, the Binghamton Tennis Center, a little over a year ago. I was just there, last week playing with my buddy who's still in the place. So they have a great opportunity there to make their programs kind of next level. So, the ability to play them on a yearly basis, we were starting that on the women's side. We were able to do that this past year. I got a schedule now on the men and women. It's exciting, and we're looking forward to the challenge for sure.
And seeing the conference of the NEC, like you said, the opponents that you already have and different things that are already coming up. I mean, their full-time membership and what that brings to it. Seeing all of that, plus the associate membership in a case like Binghamton, what do you think about the conference as a whole and the level of competition you're going to see?
I think it's going to be a test for sure across the board. When you kind of dig pretty deep and look into the scholarship structures of each of these schools, it automatically makes you think, okay, the women's space is going to be more difficult than the men in the beginning. And I feel like that's pretty obvious. So, I mean, the work that I'm going to have to do to get the women's team to the top of that conference, which is my goal, is going to be pretty hard. But I think it's attainable. And in the men's space, I think this past team I had last year would have won that conference. I'm trying to to recruit to that level again. So right in the beginning, I'm trying to win every match I play in the NEC next year, and I'm planning on doing that on the men's side.
You talked about you feel like the team that you had this year could have won it in the NEC. What makes you so confident that the team you had in the NE10 with Lemoyne men's tennis this year could have gone into the NEC in Division One and stood at the top of the conference?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's just kind of based on results. Queens played the team that won the conference, that the team that's no longer St. Francis of New York, and they beat them, pretty handily. And then we beat Queens. So yeah, I guess it's one of those mathematical things where you think, hey, it's not necessary for sure. I mean, there's no fact saying that we would beat them, but I guess when you look at the matchup, I feel pretty confident about it.
Yeah, and for you, like you said, on the women's side, it's that build up. The men's team has had a lot of recent success. The women's team, like you said, you've been building. So where is this women's tennis team at Lemoyne, and what can you say about how it's evolved over the last couple seasons?
Yeah, so I mean, past few years, some good things have happened. I had a woman named Marta Nunez from Madrid, Spain, who played for 5 years, became my all-time wins leader. Got her MBA here, and the best player really that we ever had here was a woman from Istanbul called Birdem Oz. She just was, the most competitive, really player I've ever coached, and had she stayed an extra year, she would have probably taken over the all-time wins. So that kind of springboarded us, to a conference championship. To an NCAA berth, and then these guys graduate as it always seems to happen. But so then this past year, I started three freshmen, a sophomore, and 2 juniors. So now I have 3 more freshmen coming in this year. So it's young. It's different than the men. Men, it seems to be really easy to recruit grad students right now. So I kind of try to do that. And then on the women's side, it's just not that way. So I got 3 freshmen in. There's going to be development, but I feel pretty comfortable with these 3 coming in that I think they'll contribute right away.
And for you, I mean, how the balance of both, right? The balance of having both of these teams. Now that you move to Division One, what can you say about? I mean, you've had to balance overseeing the men's tennis team and the women's tennis team at Lemoyne over these last, few seasons. How do you feel about, as they move to Division One, what it's going to be like for you to manage them as well? I mean, how do you kind of envision yourself overseeing both?
Yeah, as funny as that sounds, I think it's actually going to be a little bit easier with the women being a spring sport now. The same rules kind of apply in terms of practice times. We got those 25 dates in the fall to practice together and have matches and stuff like that. So I mean, that's going to be a little bit more, it's going to be clearer and more concise as having 2 programs at the same time. And then the spring is going to be, it's going to be traveling together. So, I mean, whereas, weekend X last year, I'm in, in April 6th and 7th, I'm in New York City with the men, and the women are just kind of off. This will be, I'm in there with the women and the men. I'll have back-to-back matches on Saturday, back-to-back matches on Sunday. So yeah, I'm not going to be, sitting watching the Masters in my hotel room. I'm going to be on the court, but that's okay. I mean, I'm still there at the end of the day. So I think it's going to be a little bit easier in that space where both teams are in the same season.
Well, like you said, I mean, the women having most of their season, the bulk of it in the fall, and then the men in the spring, having them both be in the spring now, like you said, logistically it makes sense, but for the student athletes and for their opportunity to be around you and pick your brain and this and that, I mean, what does that do for you? The experience as a coach to a player and a player to a coach, to have both of them in the same season, both in the spring. What does it do for your schedule, and what does it do for kind of your sanity at the same time, what it does for like their ability to interact with you?
Yeah, no, I think it should be easier. Like I'm hoping things work out with our indoor facility where I can practice them both at the same time. That would be huge. And there's always been a divide between the men and the women. I mean, they're still usually pretty friendly. but like, a senior male may not even ever really even get a chance to interact or meet a freshman female, now that's not going to be the case. Like, hopefully we're going to be practicing together, and we're definitely going to be traveling together on away trips. So they'll have more time with me. They'll have more time with each other.
Yep.
Hopefully they can develop some a better bond, with each program, and of course myself, and I'll have some more office hours, so I'll be a little bit more available to come in and bounce any ideas or thoughts, off of me.
You're always working, you're always doing something, you're putting yourself out there, you're playing, you're coaching, you're recruiting, you're taking care of family. Having both of these teams, men's and women's tennis at Lemoyne in the spring, what does that do for your day-to-day schedule as well as looking at it year-round? I mean, can you take your first breath in, like, I don't know, 5 years?
Good one. Yeah. I can't speak to it yet. I don't really know what it's going to do to me in the spring. We will see. I have a little bit of experience with it as an assistant. So I kind of logistical stuff I'm going to have to figure out with my daughter. But I mean, it'll all work out that way. But yeah, I mean, looking in the future, I mean, I think it's really exciting. I think I just feel this kind of hope, and I really think that things are going to be great, for men's and women's tennis, in the NEC and at Division I.
Yeah, and like, I mean, every sport is different, and every sport has, like in your case, you had put yourself up against Division I opponents in non-conference and tested yourself in men's and women's tennis. So, each sport going into Division I from Lemoyne may experience things a little bit differently. But you said, I think it's good, it's exciting. For you, was this always in the back of your mind? Was it a distant thought? Was it a distant hope of saying, hey, I'm going to train my team like they're Division I teams. We're going to play Division I opponents. I mean, did you think that maybe someday this could happen? Or were you just putting yourself in the position because that's the type of competitor you are?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really didn't think it was a possibility. When Bob first brought it up, like, it's always been a thought, and it's always been a little bit of a back burner type topic. But yeah, I mean, when there became traction, like, thanks to him, I mean, unbelievable job he did to make it happen. Yeah, for me in men's and women's tennis, I guess in some ways the reason why I still play, I don't know, it's like I collect wins, so like. And then, so I get a chance and an opportunity sometimes to play against these guys who had unbelievable careers in the D1 space, be it at, I don't know, Virginia Tech, Temple, stuff like that. That's the reason why I still play. So now, like, I've always tried to implement that with my teams. Even if we lose to a team like Buffalo, well, geez, Manny beat a guy from Riga, Latvia that probably was top 5 in Latvia. So, I mean, there's always that. Like, sure, we're trying to win as a team, but individually, this is an unbelievable matchup, and this is great for us. And that's how you get better. You get better by playing against better players and losing. You learn more from losing than from beating guys that, it's not really that difficult to beat. So yeah, I've always kind of thought that way, personally and, for my teams.
Speaking here with Jeff Lonczak, the Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis head coach here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in our exclusive multimedia marketing partnership with the Moyne Dolphins and Moyne College, and of course in this series, the road to D1. Bob Beretta, the athletics director that you just mentioned, and President Dr. Linda Lemura, they have been very open about the process. And I've been with them through this process. And they've allowed me unfiltered access to a lot of different things over almost a year. Seeing it from the inside out and having conversations with them, we're going to have open forums. We're going to have Zoom calls. We're going to have places where people can physically come. We're going to meet with the community. We're going to meet with student athletes. And alumni and parents, and we want to hear what they have to say. We're going to meet with coaches. They allowed themselves the opportunity to be open about the process. And putting themselves in that situation, speaking of Bob, speaking of Linda, speaking of Pete DeLaura and the board of directors and so on and so forth, they put themselves in a situation where they could get scrutinized, they could get disagreed with, and yet they put themselves in that position. There's other schools that make decisions to switch divisions, to switch conferences, that don't talk to anybody. Doors are shut, they make a decision, and that's it. What do you think about being a part of an institution whose leadership said, we're not going to make a decision without hearing from our coaches, our student athletes, our students, our teachers, our alumni, and our community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think I'm aligned the exact same way. Like, I appreciate input, even if it's negative. I'm trying to get other people's perspectives, and that's exactly what they did. And that they, they're a great example, for us. And I mean, it also speaks to a higher level of just kind of our core values, So I mean, it's one thing when you put on your webpage your core values and here's what they are and here's how we live by them. But then when you prove it, it's great. And to have that open discussion with everybody and to accept people's disagreements, I think it's just, it says a lot about the school and why we're all here.
When you went through the process and you found out the way that you found out, right? So, because everybody's at different parts, some are in season, some are out of season. How did you find out? Where were you? Like, what? Paint the picture of, hey, we're going D1, because you and I were having a conversation live, and I found out I was getting messages during our conversation, but I was paying attention to our conversation, obviously. So when I went to a fast break on the show, that's when I was like, okay, let me look at my phone, and then I made a phone call. How did you find out?
Right. So that morning, we had just flown in yesterday. We were at the host hotel. I had that great conversation with you, and same thing. My phone tells me. So like I'm sitting on my bed, yeah, and I'm like, I just like a lot of thoughts go through my head. Like, first of all, how do I frame this to my team? I got 8 guys graduating, yada yada yada. But like my thoughts are like, my first instinct was I'm not gonna mention this to them yet. And I didn't, I kind of mentioned it the next day to try to keep them focused on today. And me, like, I tried to do the same thing. It was so exciting. I was so jacked. I was like thinking to myself, oh, okay. I all of a sudden I just had a burst of energy. Like I got to get a hold of these recruits, like right now, but then I tried to kind of compartmentalize and reframe and say, look, you got a big match tonight against the number 2 team in the country, who I think we can hang with. Let's put this aside until tomorrow, and then really start attacking everything, schedule and everything. And that's what we did. And then the next day I talked specifically to my returning guys, and they were excited. And then the graduating guys were like, oh man, I always wanted to put on my resume, D1 athlete, and I kind of can now. I'm like, Coach, can you make that happen? I'm like, I don't know, but yeah. So yeah, it was cool. It was such a cool experience.
Well, and like you said, I mean, being in that situation where you fly in, you're getting ready, you want them to focus on the match, you're in the postseason, and at the same time, here's some big news. The irony of you're in the postseason, but now going into the NEC, as the rules stand currently, Lemoyne is barred from the NEC postseason for 2 years and from the NCAA's for 4 years. Now the NCAA could change that, and Noreen Morris, the commissioner of the NEC, said that she was sitting in a committee that was looking at doing that prior to all this other stuff going on. And they kind of pushed it to the side. Hopefully they'll bring it back to the forefront. Bob Beretta has said to me that he has asked the NEC to do away with any ban and to allow all of Lemoyne's teams to play in the postseason immediately. There are things out there that can make these rules hopefully go away if the NEC decides or the NCAA decides. How are you tackling this for men's and women's tennis, having the 2 years for the NEC and the 4 years for the NCAAs? How do you tackle that? Because you are getting used to going to the postseason, getting used to going down to Florida when it came to Division II. So how are you tackling this, and what can you say about the postseason situation with this transition to D1?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be honest with players and recruits about it. I mean, current players know, recruits know. Yeah, I like to hope that the reasons that they're picking Lemoyne and our program and our school are deeper than postseason opportunities. That being said, for us, like, yeah, we'd love to have all that lifted. I understand the concept behind it. I mean, you saw this past year with the Merrimack Fairleigh Dickinson situation in men's basketball. Merrimack beats Fairleigh Dickinson in the finals. They can't go to the postseason. Dickinson beats Purdue in the first round of the tournament. Unbelievable. Yeah. So, I mean, a little different in tennis. I mean, those type of upsets are very difficult to come by. But, yeah, I mean, I know we can do damage in the conference tournament, and, we'd love that opportunity.
Do you have a different road? Because I know that, like, with swimming and diving, I spoke with Adam Zakowski about it, and with cross country and track and field, spoke with Robin Wheelis. Like, there's certain teams that they could still go to the postseason a different way. Are there any avenues for men's and women's tennis?
I guess, yeah, good point. I didn't really think about that, but individually. So we have a regional. That's an individual tournament. That's all the best Division I teams in the Northeast come together in two different places. We're playing at University of Pennsylvania in Philly, which we've actually played before. Unbelievable facility. So if somebody like, Peter or, one of these guys or girls, wins that tournament, they would be in another like around the 32 matchup with all the biggest, individuals from, the Pac-10, the Big Ten, all those schools in the country. So, yeah, I mean, individually there's an opportunity, but team-wise, there isn't yet. But, either way, we're thinking about the future, too. So when that does present itself, like, I think it's going to be very cool. And I think we all kind of expect, my players included, expect to make the tournament someday.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about there's so much more to Lemoyne than simply making the postseason and simply sports. So to the people that are worried, are nervous about the move to D1, that are already on the program, that are already within the team as student athletes that are returning, as well as, those that have been recruited and are coming in, what's been your message? Like, what have been the biggest concerns, and what has been your message to positively kind of battle back?
Yeah, I guess some of the concerns are based on, oh geez, now we're D1, we're gonna have this many more practices, this many more matches. That's just not the case. Like the amount of practice that's determined by the NCAA is identical for Division I and Division II. Yeah. So that part we just kind of set aside and I mean, sure, I mean there's going to be a higher level of competition, but I'm trying to frame that as, that gives us an opportunity to improve, on a daily basis. There's going to be better players that are going to get recruited here. So that's going to give us an opportunity to improve on a daily basis. So, yeah, I mean, and I believe that it's a good thing, short term and long term. So, I mean, I hope everybody, at least that I interact with, can kind of understand my perspective.
There's the opening. Bob Beretta, the AD at Lemoyne, was talking with me about this, that his coaches can still schedule Division II opponents. Do you have any thought of that? Any, I know you said you had a schedule, then you had to change your schedule. Is there any thought that you would keep anyone from Division II or the NE10 on your schedule?
Right. So yeah. So I guess the rule for tennis is, once you get to that number of 12 dual matches scheduled, then you're allowed to go 50% of other divisions. So again, that takes some maneuvering. But yeah, I mean, like, Damon's right in Buffalo. They were always our closest Division II competition. And at the end of the day, like, the way I recruit and the way that my program kind of works, some of these guys and girls, I mean, they have to embrace their role as they may not be able to get in every single match. So for me to schedule some schools that maybe D2, maybe D3, maybe JUCO, who not signifying, not like singling out any sort of division, but that we may have a chance to beat, I'll be able to sit a couple of my top players, get everybody in, get those match reps that they want and need. And I talked to some of the older coaches in Division II that I'm friends with, and they joke with me, oh yeah, now hey, you're D1, you can't schedule us now. So I mean, that's just not my attitude or perspective, because hey, when we were D2, I had a lot of D1s that would schedule us, so I appreciate that, and like I said, I want to keep the relationships I've had with some of those coaches that I'm friends with.
Merrimack and Stonehill made the move out of the NE10, same conference that Lemoyne has been in, out of Division II to Division I to the same conference you're going into, the NEC. What's it going to be like to see that? I mean, Stonehill's only a year removed since they moved to Division I in the NEC. What's it going to be like to see Merrimack and Stonehill again? And I know that it's not even again in certain instances because you'll still compete with these schools, but just what it's like to see that Merrimack and Stonehill in a really kind of sports is a small world if people don't believe it, that they were your foes in conference and now they're your foes in conference in a totally different division.
Yeah, so yes, it's great. It's exciting. Merrimack, we actually beat on the men's and women's side this past year.
Yeah.
Which was very cool. I don't think we had ever beaten them before, so it's exciting. And Stonehill, like, that was our rival. Like, especially on the women's side, they had some really good coaches who have now gone on to different places. And we couldn't beat them. Like 7 years in a row, we played them in the championship. I made a shirt. I don't know if I should say this, but I made a shirt that said "Kill Stonehill," and I would wear it all week. Which, I mean, that's kind of gross, but I would wear it all week before our match. And the women would be very, very focused on trying to get that win. We finally beat them the last year that they were in our conference. So, I mean, that rivalry's back, and I haven't been able to wear that shirt in a couple of years. So, I mean, I'll be excited to get that back on. And, yeah, I mean, that's going to be a star for our schedule. That is kind of, on the women's side, our rival. So, I mean, I think it's going to be there again.
Did you at least take like a few Lysol wipes to it, or like spritz yourself with Febreze or something?
Yeah, of course. I watched it clearly, but yeah, it was time consuming watching it every day.
Absolutely. And a final note here: how does Lemoyne stay Lemoyne? What I know about Lemoyne, it's what keeps me coming back. A couple of years ago, it's crazy to believe that I'll be going into year 3 of my exclusive multimedia marketing partnership between my company, Dan Tortora Broadcast Media, and Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and the Lemoyne College Dolphins. And so, as I go toward year 3 and I reflect, Lemoyne, when people say what makes Lemoyne special, and I'm smiling when I say that because it's so easy to me. I want to say it as I'm saying it. It's the people. It's always been the people. And so it's the student athletes. I mean, you can see it. You can see it. You can feel it. You and I clicked like the first minute, 30 seconds that we talked. And I mean, I remember coming out to the first match I ever came out to on Skytop to see y'all. And, you know, the thing that I loved is that the women's team was there watching and supporting the men's team. And then you came off of the court, and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, he'll probably just shake my hand and say hello. And you stood there with me for 20 minutes. It's like 30 degrees outside. And we're talking about football. We're talking about life. You were super nice. You were thanking me for this and that. And like, let me know anyway, you know, we could come on the show and help you out. It's been the people. And you've consistently shown me that. And there's a lot of people that have been really consistent in a good way. So how does Lemoyne stay Lemoyne? Because that was another concern people had, like, oh my gosh, it's D1. There's going to be more money. There's going to be more an emphasis on sports. And what about the students? What about this? And what about that? How does Lemoyne stay Lemoyne? How do I walk onto campus and still feel appreciated, loved, respected? Because Lemoyne is such a different place. So how do you keep your identity?
Oh, thanks for that, Dan. We appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's the people. But also on another level, in terms of coaches, student athletes, the programming is huge, right? So I mean, we started with the Inside the L program, which became the Lemoyne Way program, but it focuses on our tenants as a Jesuit institution. Each year we have a different motto that we kind of try to live by. The big thing for us too is hopefully we'll keep the all sports meeting. You know, we have it once per semester. It's such a cool thing for me personally to experience all the athletes. You know, I love seeing what women's basketball has to say, and I love watching, you know, men's lacrosse interact with women's golf and all that stuff. So those things I think is what, you know, separates us from other institutions, and I'm sure with our leadership that they're going to continue. So I mean, I don't see really any change besides, you know, we're D1 now, but I think at the end of the day, our people are the same. Our you know, our mission statement is the same. What we try to do with each individual student athlete is the same. So I feel like it's just going to be better.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. If the people are the same, then what really changes? So with that being said, Jeff Lonczak, Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis head coach, and someone I consider a friend and someone I appreciate very much. You know, Jeff, you have been an awesome supporter, like I said, from like day zero of me coming onto campus, and I can't thank you enough for that. I'm so happy for you and your programs, your student athletes, your alumni, and I'm just really looking forward to taking this journey with you. So thank you for everything that you do and being the person that you are. It goes well beyond sports, and it goes well beyond winning matches, and you know that. So I just want to let you know I appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate you too, Dan. Yeah, it's been an awesome 3 years, and hopefully we can have at least another 3, and we can always continue this conversation. It's just such a pleasure for me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, I'll bid you adieu. And Jeff Lonczak, Lemoyne men's and women's tennis, moving to D1 officially on July 1st in this Road to D1 series. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care. That coming from Jeff Lonczak one more time here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. And we're going to jump right into our next conversation here. As we started a little bit back this morning, we had an early morning meeting, and so I'm very excited to be able to continue on here with you. Thank you for your patience here this morning and getting Jeff onto the show. And now it's time for Dukes to be joining me here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. Dukes join me.
Recording
and this
in progress.
is the interesting thing, and like I
Recording
said, God working
stopped.
in very purposeful ways, is that we had this kind of, the last time Dukes was on the show was a month ago. And as I said earlier in the show, who was on the show a month ago right before Dukes? Jeff Lonczak. And as we have Dukes on the show today, who's on the show right before him? Jeff Lonczak. So it's just kind of funny how this all works out. But this is a totally different segment, and I am so excited to bring you into this. And I'm so much looking forward to it. I shouldn't say it's a totally different segment. It's taking the conversation that Dukes and I had, and it's turning it into a segment, a bi-monthly segment that you're going to see here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora exclusively. And this segment is going to put us in a situation to bring you what's called Blessings in Baseball. So before, and you can see Duke's picture, before he comes on, I wanted him to experience this. He's never seen this before. So he's about to see our intro as you see it in real time for the first time ever. Blessings and Baseball is going to look like this, and the world is now going to see the premiere of it. Dukes is going to see it. Enjoy. So that's our music, that's our intro, and the spinning baseball has put us here this morning. Dukes, how are you?
I'm great, but I have to tell you, I didn't hear any music.
You didn't hear any music?
No.
Oh, well, you should have heard the music. I don't know why you didn't hear the music. So
I am so ignorant when it comes to technology. I probably have to click on something. I don't know.
That's okay. Well, I will tell you, it's very nice. It's the kind of music that they usually play in an uplifting part of a movie where somebody, finally realizes that, it's like kind of when I picture a person walking in a park and the birds start to fly and they look up at the sky and they're finally starting to heal from something. That's the type of music that I chose.
Crescendo. So, yeah. I love it.
A lot of good stuff here. So Dukes, we're calling it Blessings and Baseball. And what I mean by that in this bi-monthly segment, every other Wednesday starting today, and it'll be 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. from here on out. But today we had a little change here last second, and we apologize for that once again. We had a meeting early this morning for my company that kind of shifted everything. But from here on out, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. every other Wednesday. And so the next time Dukes and I will be here with you, besides today, is going to be on June 28th. So make sure you prepare yourselves for that. Blessings and Baseball is an easy way of talking about what I just put up here, which is essentially faith, baseball, that talk around the diamond, faith, positivity, goodness. We're here to bring God, bring faith, bring good energy, and at the same time to talk about Major League Baseball and this team that Dukes is connected to, and now I'm connected to once again after all these years, which is a huge blessing for me, and I've been talking about it for weeks, so I'm sure your ears, hopefully they've been ringing, Dukes. But Dukes is connected to this team, the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. They're only the best in baseball, and I think I figured it out mathematically that as of a few days ago, if they were in certain other divisions, they would be leading those divisions by like 15 games at the time. So with that being said, Dukes, what are your thoughts on what Blessings and Baseball, what that title means to you?
Well, I guess it goes without saying, Dan, the two most, I shouldn't say the two most important things, but nothing's more important in my life than my faith. Everything in my life is based on my faith and my relationship with Jesus. And that started basically over 40 years ago. And one of the things that I have learned, and one of the things that is such a benefit to me, is that I've learned to incorporate my faith into every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
That baseball has been a huge part of my life. From the time I was a little kid and dreamed of playing center field for the Minnesota Twins. By the time I was 10, I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I found ways to stay involved in the game. I ended up coaching high school baseball for 20, 30 years. I've been a sports writer. And now for the last 16 years, I've had just the enormous blessing and joy of serving in the press box at with the Tampa Bay Rays, and also serve at an organization called Baseball Chapel,
Yeah.
where we basically deliver, knowing that pro players can't get to church most Sundays, so we bring the church to them. I'm currently also every Monday night I'm meeting with several minor league players in the Rays organization for Bible study, and so I think that's what I love about this title here. It's taken faith and it's incorporating it into the world of baseball, and that means the world to me.
Well, and I approached you about this when I was down there a couple weeks ago covering Rays Dodgers. And funny thing, God always works in mysterious ways. And one of the ways that God reaches me that he knows I'll always see is through numbers. I happened to be at the game where the Rays scored 11 runs, the Dodgers scored 10. If you add those two together, it makes 21. My favorite number, 21. And so in my return to Tampa, I'm sitting in a game where they go to 21, and I don't know if you know this, being the press box manager and all this, and I don't know if this was done on purpose or by sheer accident, but I believe, and I called my mom and I called my dad about this. I was emotional about it, my return to Tampa to see the Rays at the Trop, because it has been over a decade. To go back in, and I'm so grateful to you and the entire team. Everybody with the Tampa Bay Rays has been phenomenal. And I sat in the seat that I sat in over 10 years ago. And I'm pretty confident it was the exact same seat. And I remember going and walking in and looking at it and going, did Dukes do this on purpose? But it was I probably going to tell me you didn't, but like, did you do it on, was there any thought to this at all? I mean, it's been so long, because if you didn't do it on purpose, then God did it, but somebody did it.
Well, yeah, that's better yet that God did it. I actually don't assign the seat arrangements.
Okay.
I have in the past, but that's no longer in my list of duties. So I just make sure that when people arrive, they know where they're supposed to sit. So,
yeah, it was just fun.
It was sure fun having you back there, Dan. Man, like I say, it's been a long time, and isn't it neat how, even though it's been so many years, it just seemed like yesterday.
I mean, it honestly, it felt like, what it felt like to me? It felt like when there's a really good TV show on and people love the characters, and then the characters like have a reunion, and once they get back on set together, it's like they never stop doing the show. And that's how I felt. Like when you walked in and I looked around I'm looking around the press box, and I'm sitting there and I'm feeling that I was feeling two things. I was sitting there going like, where were you 12 years ago in your career, and where are you now? And then I was saying, but you're still the same guy. You're still humble. You still like have tears in your eyes. You're still grateful. And so it was like this feeling of 12 years ago, people didn't think I could be here or I could do this. And I never imagined that I'd be where I'm at right now. But then it also like humbled me in saying like, I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful that the Rays said yes. Like they said yes to me 12 years ago. They said yes to me again. And so sitting in that seat, win or lose, there was so much emotion driving there. Well, there's so much emotion getting the email for the credential, driving there, talking to you, talking to the staff in Tampa, and then coming into the Trop and going upstairs, and then sitting next to someone, and the media is not always warm and fuzzy. And I happen to sit next to somebody who looks at me and says, hey, if at any time during the game you want me to take you down and show you where you're going to go now to talk to the manager and then how we're going to go, he's like, I'll bring you downstairs and I'll bring you through the system. and I'll show you where the press conference is here, and I'll show you how to get to the clubhouse, and we'll go through the whole thing together. Then when I went downstairs, he's like, hey, here's the guy who shoots all the video. Take down Dan's email and all the information. And he acted like he had known me for like 8 years. He was like, here's Dan, here's all the stuff. Make sure you guys connect. Dan does this, and this is going to be helpful to him. And it was like, I walked out of there saying to myself, God is good. God is great. And the rest of the day, I had other things planned that day, and it was no offense to anybody else, but I didn't even want to leave the Trop because I didn't want to leave that feeling. And I stayed for a while. I shot video when everybody had left. I went down to where the seats are for the fans, and I shot a video with like the ceiling behind me. I did stuff outside. I didn't want to leave. And I think that that's a testament to you, Dukes. It's a testament to the people in the front office, to the organization. And it's a testament to just like people being good people. And that's what I was talking with Jeff Lonczak about Lemoyne College before, is when you get around good people, it is like being back on the set of a sitcom. I looked over at you and I was like, I feel like I'm a kid just starting my career, because here I am back at this seat and there's Dukes over there, and here's me just grateful that I have the opportunity. So thank you for humbling me and making me feel at home at the same time.
You know, that story reminds me of, Dan, is that, number one, you know, Jesus said, I did not come to be served, but to serve. And that's what I have found in my working in the press box, is that I've met so many people who are there to serve.
Yeah.
They're so willing to help each other. And that is an incredible feeling when you surround yourself with those kinds of people. The other thing, you know, there's a scripture verse in Ephesians that says, bad company corrupts good morals. It's important who you hang around.
Yeah.
And I've been so blessed, and you're alluding to it right now, of when you're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, like we are in the press box, it just lifts your spirit. It makes the fruit of the Spirit, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control, it just makes them magnify. And that's why I consider it such a blessing to be in that environment. 81, hopefully more than that, 81 games a year.
Yeah, I mean, and for you, Dukes, I mean, almost 2 decades with the Rays, God doesn't make mistakes. The team that you just so happen to have built such a close...
I think mosquitoes might have been one. I'm going to ask him when I get to heaven. I think mosquitoes were a mistake.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to stop with that for a second. I'm going to tell you something. It's funny, every time you and I talk, and we talk about God and God doing things, he does something while we're talking about something that he did. I said, when I get to heaven, my first question to God is gonna be, why did you create mosquitoes?
No kidding.
Yeah. So my mom many of my friends can vouch for me. I said, I'm not gonna ask about why do people die. I said the first question I'm gonna say is, if you created everything with a purpose besides sucking blood, making you itch, and spreading disease, what purpose does a mosquito have? And if God says, well, spiders eat them, spiders eat a lot of things. So did you, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm going to go up to heaven and God's going to go, you know what? I really didn't need to make mosquitoes. I mean, of all things you could have said this morning, Dukes, where you're like, hey, I'm going to step aside for this, to say that, I find that, again, God showing his comedy and showing that he's watching today's show, because you said
I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in God incidences.
That's what I call them. And I said it yesterday, and you'll hear it on the show next week too. I call them God incidences. There is no such thing as a coincidence. I literally call them the same thing. But you said, I'm going to ask God about mosquitoes, and I am on record for many years saying, all right, God, I'm not going to question you. I just want you to tell me why. And I feel like he's going to go, to be honest with you, I don't know why. So, like, there's no reason. There's no reason. But
there's no reason in our limited
right.
understanding, for sure.
Right. God will give us some, beautiful, incredible thing. It'll make us cry. Then I'll want to apologize to every mosquito that bit me. But as of right now, I mean, I got bit last night and and it's immediate. You feel it. It's like, oh, I can't even be outside. But so, what I was getting at here is, you've spent all this time and God doesn't make mistakes, and God incidences, not coincidences. For you to have any team to be connected to, I mean, you are spoiled. You are so spoiled on and off the field with the Tampa Bay Rays. And I'd love for you to go deeper into that. And I say spoiled is a funny kind of, joking around term. But what I mean by it is the way I felt being back after like 12 years, you're there all the time. And there's just good people. And it's just funny how it all happens, because there's people working in the organization for the Rays that I met over a decade ago when I was working with the Magic, and now they're working with the Rays, and now like we've rekindled our connection. We haven't seen each other in years, and and Jason Wallace down in the clubhouse, I go, "Hey Jason." He turns around. I didn't say my name or anything. I put my hand out. He looks at me in the eye. His face lights up and he goes, "How you doing?" He's like, "How have you been?" And it's like, how are you here? You've been working in basketball. How did you go to baseball? And if on any team, how did you end up in Tampa? So it's funny how after all these years, here's Dukes, here's Jason, myself, good people trying to do good things in the world. And I just love for you to talk about almost 20 years with the Rays, because if you could be with any baseball team, you picked a good one.
Well, and I can't say I picked them. I'm from Minnesota, diehard Minnesota Twins fan. And my parents actually moved to Sarasota, where I am, back in 1982. They retired down here. And so I've been coming to Sarasota since 1982 and visiting them. And then when I retired in 2007, I moved down here basically to be my mother's caretaker. And knowing that I wasn't interested in just sitting around being a retired guy and reading books and, basically not being active, I knew I wanted to be active in some capacity. And so I wrote letters to the high schools and colleges in this area, gave them my background. I said, "Hey, you got any kind of work needs to be done?" Like that quote I gave you about Jesus he says, I did not come to be served, but to serve. That was basically my message. I'd like to serve you in any way I could. And that was the genesis of my work with the Rays. I had sent them a letter, and a few months later they responded. They had a need. And it's a long story that I'm not going to share right now this morning, but that's how I got involved with the Rays. Again, it wasn't my first choice. I really believe, as I look back on it, that God picked them out for me. For those first few years I was working for the Rays, I was so grateful for this opportunity and to be associated with a major league team. It really didn't matter at the time who it was. Well, it did matter, because I would often tell my friends, my family, I said, this is so amazing, the opportunity the Lord has given me. The only thing that could make it better is if it was for my hometown Minnesota Twins. That would be the utopia.
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, in 2010, when the Twins were building a new stadium, Target Field, and I knew the Twins communications department from my work with the Rays, and in 2009, their communications director approached me and said, "We really like the way that the press box is run here in Tampa Bay, And we know you're from Minnesota. We know you're a big Twins fan. We're opening Target Field next year. Would you be interested in coming to work for us? Well, Dan, like I say, that was the I was euphoric. I said, oh my gosh, that's a dream come true.
Yeah.
Well, the only problem was, and I don't mean that it was a bad problem, but my purpose being in Florida was to be my mother's caretaker.
Yeah.
And so I reluctantly had to turn the Twins down. I said, I can't leave my mother. And so I stayed, and Target Field opened up. Well, and my mother died in 2011. And so when the Twins came down that year, knowing that my mother had recently passed away, they again approached me, said, well, now your circumstances have changed. We're still looking for someone to man our press box. Would you be interested now? And I right away said, absolutely, yes. Yes, I'd love to come back and work for the Twins. So in 2012, I did. I went to, I left the Rays and went up to Minnesota. And it was an incredible experience. I loved working for the Twins, but at the same time, I was staying with one of my brothers, who was very gracious, very kind. But at the same time, Dan, I always felt like I was visiting.
Yeah.
This isn't my house. This isn't my home. So about halfway through the season, I really felt, and again, it was the Lord tugging at my heart, the Holy Spirit working. And it's like, I want to go back to Florida.
Yeah.
As much as I love the Twins organization, I want to go back to Florida. That's where I belong now. By that time, I had established a lot of relationships with the Rays, a lot of the players through Baseball Chapel, and I wasn't getting that in Minnesota. And so after 1 year, I left the Twins, and fortunately for me, when I went back, the Rays took me back, and so I've been there ever since. So, yeah, like you were saying, Dan, I've been so blessed to be surrounded by so many wonderful people. Let me say this too about that. I hear a lot of people talk about the New York media. What's it like working with them and stuff.
Yeah.
The New York media are fantastic. I love it when the Yankees come to town. Their media are so gracious and don't deserve the reputation I think that a lot of people have of them. So it's just been such a great ride, and like you say, it's the people, it's the relationships that make not only my job what it is, but it makes life what it is.
Yeah, and Blessings in Baseball segment here, bi-monthly, every other Wednesday on Wake Up Call, exclusively from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Joining you a little bit later today on Wake Up Call, where sports meets life, with Dukes Knutson and myself, Dan Tortora. Like you said, it's the people. I find it, again, a God incidence that when I left Florida in 2011 going into 2012, you left Florida as well. And the funny thing about all the work, see, when I left, I was never leaving. And I told, we started a fantasy football league, and I told the people that were in the league, I said, listen, I'm not leaving. I may physically not be here every day, but I'm not leaving. I want you all to listen to the show. I will always be here for you. And I'll draft with you. I'll come down. And to this day, I have these last few years. Now, we've kept the league going. The league's going to be 12 years old this year. I have flown down to draft with them. The people that listen, the people that support me, I fly down and I see them. And they're still some of the greatest supporters that have become friends and most wonderful people. And we pick a place. I literally fly down to see them. I make trophies for them, and we get to celebrate together. In all this time since you and I have seen each other, physically seen each other, God's been working, and I've been working. My company this year in July 20th, will turn 11 years old.
Mm.
And in all of these years in between, I said when I left Florida, Florida is my second home. Florida is another hub of my show. I will keep connected with Florida. Florida is another place that's like a big part of my company. 11 years later, Tampa Bay Rays, UCF, USF, Miami, Florida State, longest credential I've had with any team ever, 13 years, Jacksonville Jaguars, covering Florida high schools. Florida as a state has literally become the second hub, the satellite location of Wake Up Call, of what I do. And it was something that I said for years and years and years, Dukes. And I kept saying it. I believe it. I believe it. And then I had a client that I've worked with over the years, and he said, we're down here in Florida. We know your value here. You are a national brand, and we want to work with you, and we see what you do. And when somebody else said to me, we see your value in Florida, we see your value nationally, we follow you and we know who you are. It was all of that work in the trenches, behind the scenes. People always say, how did you build your company? I said, God and I in the trenches. Him and I, all the time, middle of the night, in the middle of the day, didn't matter. And it's just funny how God works when you tell your story and I tell my story, because having Florida teams and organizations and businesses and people and residents truly see me as a direct line from my company and my show to Florida. And I have the Disney show that I do and a lot of other things. Saying it and speaking it into existence, and then having God put me around the right people to make it happen, like yourself. I am so honored to say that, like, it is the second hub now. It is a second home. There are people in Florida that are like, Dan, you are as much a resident of New York as you are to Florida. And that means the world to me. And I try to stop myself from crying a lot of these times, because God is so good. And this world, I think, is trying to push him out so quick. But if you get around people that really have God in their lives and know Jesus and are open to the Holy Spirit and all of that, it's not, people treat it as crazy. It's not crazy. It's not Bible thumping. It's not standing on a corner with a megaphone. You know, if you're around people that just shut the door in their house in silence where nobody can see them, and they just get down on their knees and they say, God, thank you for waking me up this morning. Thank you for bringing me through today. Thank you for all of my blessings. I don't like that person cut me off, and I don't like that I broke up with that person, and I really wanted that job, but you know what? I was alive to go through all of it. I could have been dead and not go through any of it. I had a friend that I could call when my girlfriend broke up with me. I got a job that's better than the job that I thought I wanted. You know, if you could get around somebody that can tell you that every time God said no, it was a good thing, then, you know, this world just looks, I really honestly feel like we see the world through what we've experienced. And if you surround yourself with good people, Dukes, it's really hard to be around somebody like you and think that this world is all bad. And I really hope that you take that and you keep that in your heart, because you don't just send me like a, hey, how are you? You send me this well thought out story of an email, and you would pour your heart into them. And I just want the world to know that there's people out there like you.
Well, it's so true. And as you just explained, when we seek out and find those good people, it just enhances our life. I just can't say enough about the people that God has put in my life. And we do have to be careful. God warns us, we are not to be yoked with non-believers. That doesn't mean we don't talk to non-believers, but yoked means, our most intimate relationships should be with like-minded believers so that we can continue to grow in our relationship with the Lord. And I've sure found that true in my life.
What do you say? Because I've dealt with this, and being single and dating, I've been in situations where a woman loves everything about me. You're funny, you're kind, you're successful, you love what you do. And then she says, "Do you believe in God?" And I say, "Yeah." And she goes, "I think that's going to be a problem." What do you do? And I literally, like, more than half of the people that I've dated have been turned off by my belief in God, or don't understand it, or combat it. When someone says to you, "Dukes, why do you believe in God?" What do you say?
All I have to do is look around me. Even right now, sitting in my house, I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing trees, I'm seeing sunshine, I'm seeing a beautiful landscape. I mean, man just doesn't create those things. I believe in God because of life itself. We are living in such a confused world right now, and I'm sure I'd be accused of being too simple-minded. But man, I look at life. I look at a little baby and say, "There's God. There's God. Can't you see it?" Man cannot do that, and that evidence is just all around us. Just driving in the complex I live in this morning. Up in Minnesota, we have the most gorgeous falls when the leaves turn colors and everything. Well, down here, many of our trees blossom this time of year. And there's the most gorgeous yellow, white, red trees right now in bloom. And that's the kind of beauty that can only come from a God. You what you were saying earlier, Dan, spawned something in me that there's a reason for everything, and we don't always see it. Like you, I'm single. I'm a lifelong bachelor. 73-year-old bachelor. There was a time, especially in my 20s and 30s, that I yearned to be married. I wanted a family, the all-American dream. That was me. And I had a good job. I was teaching and coaching in high school, but my goal was to be an athletic director. That was my career goal. Well, 3 times I applied for athletic director positions, and 3 times I was the runner-up.
Yeah.
And I was full of disappointment, frustration. But Dan, it's so easy for me to look back now. Easy. And see how God's plan was far better than my plan for myself. I am so grateful that I never became an athletic director. I am so grateful today that God has given me the gift of celibacy to live the single life. Paul talks about it in Corinthians, that it's pretty special to be given that gift. It's not for everybody. In fact, it's not for the majority. But for a few people, this is God's gift to you. And again, we don't always see it at the time.
Yeah.
And but man, like I say, I just can't. I'm so grateful for those 2 gifts in particular.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you said something's a gift that most people would say is a death sentence, right? To be single, to not have the kids and the wife and this and that, and you see it a different way.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think when you say it's a gift, it's like, what? And then it's like, wow, if you see, like, if God purposely is doing something in your life, it is a gift. And I'm moved by that personally today, to see things as like, when God doesn't give you what you asked for, that that is the gift. I mean, I look back and I go, if God listened to me, I wouldn't have my own company right now. If God listened to me, I would have married somebody that I barely knew, that was all about the money. Or seems that way. If God listened to me, I would have never moved back to New York and dug my roots in my community. If God listened to me, I would have never had the opportunity to take care of my grandma. If God listened to me, I would have stayed in places that weren't healthy for me. If God listened to me, I wouldn't have had the adversity that made me the person that I am today, a person that is not looking for someone to carry me, but knows that I'm strong enough to pick myself up off the ground myself.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, I think if my mom and my dad's listening right now, or my grandparents up in heaven, you just hit me with something like, I went and sat with my priest yesterday and I was like, I'm 37 years old and I don't have a wife and kids and I'm upset about it. And I said, I don't challenge God. I'm not questioning God. I don't mean it like that. I said, and I'm sorry for the times that I have challenged or questioned God. But I said, I was like, that's not what, like, I've learned. I'm not here for that. I said, I just don't get it and I'm upset. And he's like, well, you have every right to be upset. But when you just said to me, like, maybe God is doing it, maybe forever, maybe not forever, maybe for now. But when you just said, like, it's a gift that you don't have a wife and kids, because, like, there's something that, like, maybe God needed your focus or he needed you to be able to travel or whatever it is. When you just said it's a gift, I was just like, wow. If I thought of this as a gift, man, like, I would have had so much less stress for, like, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That's so, I mean, like, you just hit me with something today.
Well, I think there's a mindset too that happened to me fairly young. I think probably in my 30s, where you take that disappointment of not getting the athletic director jobs, for example, and I started looking at it like, rather than me be disappointed, it was like, well, God, all that means is you have something better planned. You know, I can be disappointed right now in the moment, but I also believe, accept, and am excited about that you have something better for me than what I had planned for myself. And again, I have found that to be truth in my life, not just a calming effect. So it comes down to, you know, we always say trust and obey God. Those are two most important parts of our relationship, to trust him and obey him. And I learned to obey him and trust him that his plan is much better than my plan.
Well, and I think as hard as it is to do the first one, trust, I think it's even harder to hear the word obey. Because in today's world, it's like, no one's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to live my life. No one's going to chain me down. I'm nobody's slave. Obey. Obey what? And it's like, well, God is not man. We're not asking you to submit to a human or an animal or whatever. It's obey God, you know, obey. I mean, you go back and you look at the 10 Commandments, and when people are like, oh, there's too many rules, look at what they are. Thou shalt not kill. Okay. Seems simple enough. Thou shalt not covet anything that belongs to thy neighbor. That's hard for some people. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Covet thy neighbor's wife. Honor your father and mother. That's a tough one for some people because some people don't have a mom or dad. Some people have parents that are abusive. And so they say, well, what about this? What about that? And I say, well, you know what? If you don't have a parent, you have a parent. You have God. You know, when somebody doesn't step in, somebody steps in. And I would argue with people that God has been my parent, my best friend, my business partner, the love of my life, my sanctuary, my test ground, my place to make mistakes, my place to learn, my place to grow. God is the only thing in my life that has been consistent. And that doesn't mean that I don't have love from other places. It means that God never said he was too busy for me. He had too much going on. He didn't understand me. He didn't get it. He didn't care. It didn't matter to him. God never showed up to a meeting late and said, I don't care, or didn't show up at all. And I think that where people go wrong, and I could be totally wrong in saying this, but I think where people go wrong with God is they think God is human. They think that God thinks like a human. And human beings, there's prejudice, there's selfishness, there's past experiences, and people think that God thinks like that. And that's not how God thinks. And what breaks my heart, Dukes, is that whether it's in sports or in life in general, and people know the wake-up call is where sports meets life, I think that when something happens to somebody, the thing is, well, if there was a God, I would be married. If there was a God, my wife wouldn't have cheated. If there was a God, my mom wouldn't have died of cancer. If there was a God, my grandparents wouldn't have died before I was born. If there was a God, I wouldn't have gotten sick. If there was a God, there would be no COVID. And I find that people always say, because my life is not perfect, because I don't have, because, you know, if I've ever gotten sick or I've ever lost money or anything's ever happened, then there's no God, because God wouldn't do that to me. I'm a good person. And I tell people, God didn't do that to you. God didn't create taxes. God, you know, God could stop a storm. Yeah, God can stop a storm. I can't tell you why Hurricane Katrina happened, but I could tell you when I went to New Orleans and I met the people that lived there, I met God face to face. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the craziest thing about people that don't believe in God because of adversity and strife is that that's how I know God. The same reason they don't believe is the same reason why I know God exists. Because every time I had adversity and strife, somebody grabbed my arm and said, hey, we're not laying down. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because there are a lot of people that say if God existed, there wouldn't be pain.
Well, yeah, and Scripture addresses that quite often about how, you know, we're guaranteed suffering, we're guaranteed persecution, all of us. He doesn't necessarily take away our problems. He helps us through them. He shows us how to get through adversity in life. And like you're saying very eloquently, Dan, I mean, that's when we learn to grow in life, in our relationship with him. And you know, I think this kind of relates to what you're talking about too, is like you said, we think in human terms.
Yeah.
You know, we think, you know, life starts at birth and it ends at death. But the truth is that's just a twinkling of our life. We're going to have an eternity. And I'm more concerned about preparing for eternity, using this time on earth, whatever it is, from 80 years, whatever we get, to prepare for the next life. That's the most important part. That's why I believe that our greatest responsibility as a Christian is in Matthew 28, the Great Commission. We are to go into all the world and proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ so that all people will get to heaven. That's God's desire. I'm concerned that we're living in, and I guess I get a little critical sometimes of the American Christian, that we've become so comfortable in our Christian walk because of the affluence we have in America. The sense of entitlement that is so prevalent in our society, I think, is creeping into the Christian world as well. I just, we have to start living out. Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey me. And I've talked to so many Christians and particularly young people who will say, yeah, I love God. I love God. But what are you doing to demonstrate that love? You have to obey him. You have to go, you have to be concerned about the homeless, the poor, the oppressed. And are we? I don't know if we have time for this quick story, but the year I went and worked with the twins, there's a parable in Matthew 25 called the parable of the sheep and the goats, and basically what it is that God's talking to this group of sheep and a group of goats, and he tells the sheep, you're going to heaven, and the goats, you're going to hell, and they don't understand why. Why are we going to heaven? Why are we going to hell? And he goes through this litany. He says, well, when I was hungry, you sheep, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. And the sheep said, what? When did we do that for you? And he said, whenever you did it for the least of my brothers, you did it for me. And then he goes through the same thing with the goats. You're going to hell because when I was hungry, you didn't give me anything to eat. You didn't give me anything to drink. You didn't visit me in prison. And he said, wow, when did we not do that for you? He says, because you didn't do it for the least of my brothers. Yeah. Well, I had read that parable, Dan, so many times, and then all of a sudden one time it really hit me. I was doing a lot of good things. I was involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I was involved in my church, baseball chapel. I'm doing a lot of good things, but you know what? What am I doing for the hungry? What am I doing for the thirsty? What am I doing for prisoners? And the answer was nothing. You are a big goat. And because of that experience, I got involved in prison ministry. And I spent every Friday night for 9 years down at the Sarasota County Jailhouse, visiting with prisoners, telling them about Jesus. And I think that and again, I'm as guilty as anybody, but we have to start walking the talk. Yeah. It's easy to say, I love God, I love God, I love God. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing for him? So anyway, I think that's one of the real keys of life itself is to serve him.
Well, and you bring it up, and I think about that because I always, people always say that know me, they're like, you always give like analogies and metaphors, and I said, yeah, I try to help it make sense for people and break it down, and it's just something that comes to me. I blame God for that, and I tell people this all the time, that there's so many things in today's world that logic refutes. And when you break it down in really simple terms, nobody can argue. But they just don't want anybody to call it out. And I was having this conversation yesterday, and you just said, people say, oh, I love God. Oh, I grew up. I hear this from women all the time in dating. I grew up Catholic, but I'm not Catholic anymore. I grew up believing in God, and they forced me to go to church. And then I was 20 years old, and I said, I'm not going to church anymore. My mom made me go to church my whole life. And it's like a rebellion against your parents, which turns into a rebellion against God. And You just said it. You said, if you love God, what are you doing? And I'd say this all the time. There's not a person on this planet that's going to look you in the eye and say, I'm a bad person. Everyone's going to tell you they're a good person. What person would tell you they're a bad person? They're going to tell you you're a good person, or they're a good person. It's what they do that shows you who they are. But who in their right mind would walk into a job and want to get a job and they say, are you a good person? And they go, no, that's why you should hire me. I'm a terrible person. I'm going to steal from you. I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to come in late. No, you say, you could be the latest person in the world. You say, I'm going to show up early every day. Why? Because you want the money. And so it's what you do, not what you say. What you say obviously is important, but you have to back it up. And so I would take a metaphor and say this to people. If loving God is as simple as sinning whenever you want and just going, well, I'm sorry, and now I got a clean spirit and I can sin again. Would you do that to your wife? Would you do that? Would you marry somebody that cheated on you every Wednesday? Because on Thursday, they would say, I'm sorry, I love you, I won't do it again. No. Who in their right mind would do that? Would you marry somebody who would beat you, harass you, verbally attack you, as long as they said in public, I'm a really good husband, I'm a really good wife, but behind closed doors you have bruises internally and externally? People would not put up in human relationships what they hand God every day. And I find that to be such a sad part of today's society, is that you want God to deal with everything and anything that you would never put up with. And your thought behind it is, well, he's going to love me no matter what. Yeah, he will. But could your wife say that to you? Yeah, I cheated on you. I lied to you. I had sex with your brother. I disrespected you. I embarrassed you at a work event, but you know that I love you. Would you let that happen and be okay with it? And I feel like we treat God like an old dirty rag sometimes. We just use him to clean up all our messes, but we never clean the rag. And I feel like we owe God more than... I feel like our problem in society is we think God owes us something, when in actuality, we need to step up a little bit more.
We owe him everything. He owes us nothing. He already paid the price for us. But you're exactly right.
So let me bring it back here in closing to the world of baseball. The ministry that you do for the Tampa Bay Rays, for those coming up in AAA, and as well as those on the team, how do you, what makes you feel rewarded in what you do? When like you said, Jesus gave, right? Jesus washed the feet. And people are like, why are you washing our feet? And Jesus said, why not? He came to serve. So when you are serving, when you are washing the feet through your ministry, what makes you feel the Holy Spirit empowered? But like, when you see these interactions with these players, what to you is just such a blessing, is what I'd like to end with today.
Well, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's the relationships, and there's something so unique about a Christian relationship. I used to be involved with FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, summer camps. And I primarily worked with some of the college kids who were basically we call them huddle leaders, but they were kind of like the camp counselors.
Yeah.
And they were assigned to work with high school kids and junior high school kids. And I spent a week with those guys, 1 week of my life. And now 30 years later, I'm not only still in contact with them, even though I haven't seen them for 30 years, some of them, but I feel such a kindred with those guys. I feel much closer to them than I do to people who I worked with for 34 years and saw every day. So there's something so unique about that bond that God brings into relationships. Um, I just this past weekend, when the Rangers were in town, and I met one of the players on Texas through another friend of mine who's a player for the Texas Rangers, and we spent 10 minutes with each other. And we're going to be having a Zoom meeting tomorrow to continue to get to know each other. But in those 10 minutes, we both established that we have a brotherhood that the world doesn't understand. And so that is what excites me about my ministerial work with these ball players. I mentioned earlier that I meet every Monday night with some of our minor league guys, and it's been a month now. We've been meeting for a month every Monday night, and those guys are so important right now in my life. They are. I went to their ball game last night. They played over here at Ed Smith Stadium in the Complex League, and it was such a thrill to watch them performing, using the gifts God has given them, and to see them growing in their faith. They keep coming back every Monday night because they want to grow in their relationship with the Lord. So that's no doubt that's the most rewarding and important part of my ministry work with those guys.
Oh, and you said that when the brotherhood, the connection that the world doesn't understand. What were we told? One sentence that if we actually said it and believed it every day, we would stop complaining. You are not of this world.
Right.
You're not of this world. This is the spinning hotel for right now. And yeah, I mean, I'm just moved by it. And I'm moved by the sports world when people say, Dan, why are you doing this segment? Blessings in baseball. You're going to turn people off that hate God. You're going to turn people off that don't want to hear it. And I would say I've welcomed everybody. I've talked to atheists, agnostics, I have people of all different religions and backgrounds. I have close friends that are Jewish. And I've never discriminated against anybody. And so what I would say to them is what I always say on my show and off the air. If I don't discriminate against you, then please do not discriminate against me. I love my God, and he loves you too, whether or not you know that yet. And why am I doing blessings in baseball? Because I need it. The world needs it. People need to know that it's okay to thank the person, the being, whatever you want to call it, to thank God. It's okay to say thank you for literally everything you have.
Amen.
It is okay to do the sign of the cross and get down on a knee and say, God, I can't do this by myself. Or God, without you, I couldn't have done this. On our happiest days, it's God's fault. And on our toughest days, it's God's fault how we can get up. And I don't know a lot of things about life. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on anything. But I do know that God loves me. And I know that I am grateful every single day that I could get up in the morning and not have to ask my boss if I could talk about God. And when I worked for other people, I never asked them either. And if they fired me, I said, just make sure you put on that line that you fired me for my First Amendment right of freedom of religion.
Amen.
So I'm thankful, and we're going to talk about a lot of things over the months and over these episodes, and sometimes it's going to be heavy Rays and baseball and techniques and different things, and sometimes it's going to be about God. But the thing I love about this conversation, Dukes, is number one, you're willing to have it. Two, you're not afraid to have it. Three, you've already made me feel better and inspired me today. Four, I know the Spirit is with me. I know the Holy Spirit's here. And five, that we can literally talk about anything. And my mom said this to me Monday. I said, Ma, when I talk about God, I just feel like it's so weird. Like 19 years of being a broadcaster, almost 20. When I started, I talked about God freely. Now when I talk about God, I have this like feeling like I got to apologize. I got to say something, like these voices in your head of like this, that, whatever. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, but Dan, in the sports world, all of those people that come on your show, they all talk about God. And I said, isn't it funny that God put me in the sports world, and that the sports world, no matter how crazy the world has gotten, most athletes and coaches say something about God. And so when they say, Dan, why do you talk about God on a sports show? I would say, why wouldn't I talk about God anywhere? And I would also say that God is welcome in sports, it seems, in more than a lot of places right now.
Amen. Yeah, and just look at the Darrell Hamlin situation this past fall. How, in the midst of that sudden tragedy, who did the world turn to?
God.
God. And so I really believe that we all have an inner yearning to have that relationship, but again, society, Satan is alive and well, and we'll probably get to that more in future episodes, but he's having a big impact on our world today, and he's preventing a lot of people from developing that relationship. Yeah.
Well, we can tell you all that two things in closing. Satan lost before it even started. Two, don't be a part of the losing team. And I guess my bonus thing is, Dukes, thank you for taking this journey with me and for not being afraid to talk about God. That means a lot to me.
Oh, man. Not only not afraid, but eager.
Dukes Knutson, Blessings in Baseball, every other Wednesday, exclusively on Wake Up Call, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. As Dukes, always, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you, and I send you my love.
Vice versa, buddy. Love you.
Love you too. Take care. That coming from Dukes Knutson once again here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Where sports meets life. Some of you may be turned off by the fact that I talk about God. Some of you may have shut the show off, literally, because I talked about God and you're not even hearing what I'm saying right now. But I want to be clear about something. I have never sought to discriminate. I'm friends with people of different sexual orientation, I guess I'll say. Sexual orientation, gender, race, money, language, country, religion, and so on. I have never discriminated against anyone for being different than me. So, if you are offended by God, you shouldn't be offended by a show that welcomes you. And at the same time, I will tell you this. You could shut me off everything, and I'll turn back on somewhere else. Because God has always given me a voice, and you would not believe how many people tried to shut me up. I will always be here. As long as God will have me, I will always speak. And I will always seek to bring love, to bring laughter, to bring joy, to bring positivity, to bring thought, to bring justice, honor, integrity, fruitfulness, community, camaraderie, friendship, family. understanding, equality to the show, to everything that I do. So if you're offended by goodness, I guess I'm not for you. But I'd also ask you to seek internally and understand why you'd be offended by God, goodness, kindness, and a person who welcomes you even when you don't make me feel welcome. I love everybody, even the ones that treated me bad. And I do that because God didn't teach me to hate. God taught me to love. Not when it's easy. Not just when it's easy, but when it seems incredibly impossible. The world today has been the most challenging world that I've ever lived in 37 years. And I couldn't love God more. So yeah, my show's different. And no, I'm not sitting here talking about statistics and the NBA finals and golf right now. I talked about God. And I've been different my whole life. And I thought it was a bad thing. But I've had God to teach me that it's not. That being different was the best thing that I could do. And I've been surrounded by wonderful loved ones. From people to dogs in nature alike. That constantly remind me that being who I am, it's not only good enough, it's the only thing to choose. So you may not like that I talk about God, and that's your prerogative. But I love what I do, and I love who I am. And even if you can't love me, I love you back. We'll be back after this.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student-athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox. This is a special message from 317 at Montgomery restaurant owner Joel Carpenter. Open Tuesday through Saturday for your dining pleasure on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York.
We wanted to be a part of the resurgence of Syracuse. We saw a lot of money being put into bringing people back downtown and thought that, we'd like to be a part of that. I love putting together a good dish where people see it first, they fall in love with it, and then it tastes just as good as it looks. We want to provide the best food in Syracuse that we possibly can, and we want you to leave here talking to your family, your friends about what you had to eat first and foremost, but also our service, and to walk out feeling like you're part of our family. I work out in the front of the house a lot, and I love walking to every single table, asking them how everything is, and people looking at me and smiling and saying, this is the most amazing short rib I've ever had. This is the most amazing filet I've ever had. And Donna is great. Sarah's amazing. Thank you for coming over and talking to us. And them just being truly happy for the experience that they've gotten.
317 at Montgomery Restaurant, part of the fabric of downtown Syracuse, located on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York, open Tuesday through Saturday for a unique and memorable dining experience. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, hanging out where sports meets life. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, bringing you What's Poppin'. Today's guest, of course, on a Wednesday. We start off every Wednesday with Dolphin Time, so you got to hear from Jeff Lonczak, the Moyne Dolphins men's and women's tennis head coach. Really cool that both teams are going to have their season at the same time. They're going to be able to travel together and have matches in the same place where they could double up, which is an awesome piece, because the women have been competing in the fall, the men in the spring, and now they will be competing in the NEC in Division I. As of July 1st, 2023, becoming D1 programs, they will be both competing in the spring, which is really, really cool. And we got to speak with Jeff about so many different topics surrounding the road to D1 in our series, which is titled the same, The Road to D1, with Moyne exclusively on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And you can go and check back episodes with other coaches and other programs by going to youtube.com/wakeupcall DT. A big time thanks to Dukes Knutson and God Works in Very Purposeful Ways. Duke said, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in God incidences. I say the same thing. Duke said, I'm going to ask God about mosquitoes because everything has a purpose, but he wants to know about mosquitoes. And I have literally said that for years. So it's funny how God works and how amazing God works, and the irony and the God incidents that the last time Dukes was on the show was the last time Jeff Lonczak was on the show, and they literally were back to back. So Dukes Knutson and I starting a new segment officially started today called Blessings and Baseball. And once again, I'm going to let you see the intro for that so you could see what it's all about. Faith, sports, and life around the diamond, blessings and baseball, a new exclusive segment to Wake Up Call, will be coming to you every other Wednesday, bi-monthly, every other Wednesday, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So the next time you'll see Dukes on the show is June 28th. With that being said, we thank you so much for tuning in to Wake Up Call all around the world, wherever you are, on youtube.com, facebook.com, and mixlr.com, all /wakeupcalldt, and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to take our final step aside of today's broadcast and wrap up the show right after this.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond. You can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory Factory available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you? This is a special message from Merritt Brady, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Watertown on 1290 Arsenal Street in Watertown, New York.
Chick-fil-A for me has always been about the people. I think it starts with the strength and leadership of the Cathy family. It's just amazing to see a family-run business reach the altitude that they have. Second mile service is something that we embodied at my previous business, and the ability to make people feel like they're the only person at your establishment, that you are there to serve them that day and looking for those extra ways to make them happy, to anticipate what they need next is what makes me tick. And I'm going to have so many opportunities at Chick-fil-A to do that. It's one of my favorite things to eat in the world. My favorite application question or interview question when I'm interviewing is when I get to, have you ever eaten at Chick-fil-A? And a smile hits both their ears. You know, they can't even answer the question for a second. And when I see that, it's like, man, that's going to be a great hire. They already get it. They already feel it. They already know that we're different. The Chick-fil-A experience, it's a real thing. And then, of course, just our generosity and community involvement and making a positive impact in the lives of our team members, our guests, and the community in general, I think is really the secret sauce.
In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville Bees. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I want to thank you for being with us on all of our outlets. There's so many different ways to interact with the show. Once the broadcast is live, you can go and find our archives and go back and listen to past episodes. Over 1,100 episodes available. You can go to Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes and Apple Podcasts, MixLR, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, Podvine, Player FM, YouTube, Boomplay, Podchaser. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. And a big time thank you to all of our wonderful, wonderful, and incredible partners here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Mother's Cupboard, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Great Lakes Honda City, PB&J's Lunchbox, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Avicoli's, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Chick-fil-A Watertown, Pizza Man, 317 at Montgomery Street. The name of the location is the name of the restaurant, and you can go there throughout the week to get their fantastic and amazing menu. I call it a 5-star Michelin restaurant. Tuesday through Saturday, they are open. So make sure you go out there. Wake Up Call is proud to be the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Moyne College Dolphins. It's Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call. Catch your Dolphins on Wednesdays like today for Dolphin Time at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. You'll find your Dolphins first and third Wednesday of each month, AD and DT with Athletics Director Bob Beretta. Second and fourth Wednesday of each month, you'll find the Dolphin Dive, diving into the stories of student athletes, coaches, future Dolphins, and alumni. Under promise and over deliver. There's been more Dolphin Dives and AD and DTs than we've promised, and you can find our ever-growing library on the Lemoyne tab on wakeupcalldt.com and by subscribing to our YouTube channel at wakeupcalldt or youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. For more information on Dolphins, go to lemoynedolphins.com, and as always, Fins Up. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse. The Bobcats come to you on Wake Up Call like never before anywhere else. The spotlight on Bryan and Stratton is large, and we are so grateful every single month to have the Bobcats on with national champions as well as teams that competed in national tournaments, covering an inaugural season of the baseball program as well as esports coming up here on the show. For all of our Bobcat content, you can go to the BSC Syracuse tab on wakeupcalldt.com and subscribe to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and search Bobcat Buzz. So many great things coming up. You don't want to miss that awesome discussion with Mary Hawkins, the new campus director at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, as she gets to know all of the head coaches in real time while you get to know all of them on screen in a really funny, also deep, and very sentimental Bobcat Buzz. So check all of that out on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt by searching Bobcat Buzz. And for more information on your Bobcats, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com and go Bobcats. You heard the little one here. You know, they say that you should be proud when your kids want to do your job. And Lily likes to talk on this microphone, and she likes to make noise on the microphone too. So you probably heard her maybe a little bit, but she came into the studio. She wants you all to have a great week, and she must have wanted to say hi. How you doing, Mama? I love you. So with that being said, I want to thank Jeff Lonczak and Lemoyne in this Road to D1 series and all the coaches that have been a part of it. I want to give a special thanks to Dukes Knutson and our new segment that was unveiled today, Blessings in Baseball, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Facebook at WakeUpCallDT, Twitter at CallDT, and Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. In the meantime, folks, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless, no stress. Do your best. And what that means, may you remember that God has blessed you even in your toughest moments, and may you appreciate those blessings and be good to God and good to yourself. No stress. To the best of your ability, I know it's impossible to keep it all out sometimes, but keep your stress levels minimal. Stress will never help you and always hurt you. And do your best, because if you give your best and you give your all, then you should be proud. You can't fail when you do your best. Well, Dan, what if I lost the game? What if I don't get the girl? What if I don't get the guy? What if I don't get the job? Then I failed. No. Because when you give your all and you give your best, you'll eventually get what's coming for you. And it goes all the way back to God bless. Those blessings will come to you if you give your best. Have a great day. Be safe. Stay well. And from Lily and I on Wake Up Call, we hope the best for you all. Be good to each other. Be good to your pets and to everybody out there. We love you. Take care. You got anything? No? We're good?